Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is the humble voice of Olusegun Opayemi Odunton. On Monday 19th, we saw a letter of invitation from the Nigerian police force inviting the NLC president. But before we go into the details of that letter, it is important that we continue to use every platform and every medium to demand the immediate release of Nigerians who were captured and who are still held in captivity by the Tinubu administration. Let us be reminded that on August 4th, Comrade Adaramoye Michael Lenin, one of the peaceful protesters in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, was captured, was abducted in his sleep by Nuhu Ribadu's men on the orders, on the instruction of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We demand his immediate and unconditional release. Is one of millions of Nigerians that do not have the resources to flee the country. He is one in a million Nigerians who have decided to stay, who have no choice but to grow the balls and the heart to demand an end to bad governance and to also demand a better deal for the people of Nigeria. The government has refused to arraign Comrade Michael Lenin. He is still being held. Other Nigerians, thousands of them are still being held, which is also in sharp violation of their constitutional rights. So let us go into today's business. On Monday, August 19, we saw a letter of invitation from the Nigerian police force addressed to the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, inviting the president of the NLC for an interview or to an investigation of criminal conspiracy, terrorism financing, treasonable felony, subversion, and cybercrime, in which the name of the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress was supposedly and allegedly mentioned. And just like myself, millions of Nigerians are at a crossroad on whether to solidarize or to not solidarize. But first and foremost, we must say and we must remember the saying that karma is a bitch. But we have never seen karma this swift in our retributive prowess. Because few weeks ago, Nigerians were extremely disappointed by the outcome of the slave wage negotiations that was conducted by the leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, which agreed to a 70,000 naira slave wage for workers. We call this slave wage because it is way below the minimum needed to scrap a meaningful living at a time when food inflation is over 40% and energy costs keep soaring. Cost of living and purchasing power parity have conspired to sink Nigerians, millions of them, nose deep into the mashes of multidimensional poverty. The preponderance of our people millions of Nigerians are gasping for breath, and worse, the life support of palliatives are not enough to oxygenate or to resuscitate the economy, as these have been diverted, even if they exist at all. And let us note that the middle class is not exempted from this economic asphyxiation. The NLC and the TUC, when it mattered most, failed to conduct a transparent negotiations with the Tinubu administration. And the resolution of that negotiations was greeted with millions of question mark. And most disappointing is how the NLC and the TTUC even failed to support Nigerians or to mobilize support during the end bad governance protest. Instead, they watched from their aristocratic towers how millions of suffering Nigerians protested peacefully but were violently crushed by the Tinubu administration. But now that the democratic despot has turned its sinister attention towards the NLC, we see from the NLC a cynical fallback to the ranks and file of poor Nigerian workers, the same suffering and helpless poor that they fail to misrepresent by attempting to play both sides, which has now boomerang, which has now blown up in their face. So I know millions of Nigerians are confronted by the same rhetorical question as mine, which is whether to show solidarity or throw the NLC leadership under the bus. But in deciding and in resolving this historical question, I crave your objectivity and I crave your scientificity, because the steering of our nation is in the dangerous hands of a man who has resorted to fascist tactics and agbadarized despots, who has chosen to militarize our democracy, a man who has weaponized our diversity into an ethnophobic gunpowder, blasting away at the sinews of national unity and solidarity. The lessons of history do not fail to expose the wiles and guiles of despots. Hitler used the same stratagem: xenophobia and state terror, violence. They create an enemy. They demand and justify the need for more power to crush the enemy. We must beware to not repeat history or to not let vicious history repeat itself. While we hold our national security dear, we are afraid. We fear that our state is being manipulated to winch hunt citizens and to suppress our constitutional rights. To us, this fascist trend is a national emergency for all Nigerians at home and abroad. We have a duty to rise and to end this ugly trend. But first, we must set aside our grievances or misgivings against the leadership of the NLC and the TUC, simply because we are confronted with a greater evil that must not be allowed to prevail. We suspect that the rules of national security is about to be used to reshuffle the leadership of the NLC with the goal of sneaking in cronies, shady characters, and subservient lackeys into the leadership of the NLC. So we have a responsibility. We must rise and we must show solidarity with the NLC, and we must ultimately defend the sanctity of our states against the fascism of these bipedal rats and bats. So we must support the president of the NLC in this and through this. We must get to the bottom of this, and we should not allow few elected officials, supposedly elected, politicians with stolen mandates. We cannot afford to let them turn our states into a witch hunting entity. Again, we demand the immediate release. We demand the unconditional release of Comrade Adaramoye Michael Lenin, who was captured in his sleep on August 4th and is still being held in captivity by Ribadu and the Enebu administration. Thank you. Aluta continua Victoria Asata.